Hello and welcome everyone to this Digital Trade Standards and Simplified Trade Systems briefing session. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much to all of our speakers who are joining us today, and on behalf of GS1 Australia and the National GS1 Traceability Advisory Group Steering Committee, I would like to welcome all the participants as well joining us today. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started so that we're all on the same page. We would ask you to please be present, try avoid multitasking, doing emails and answering phones in the process of our speakers speaking. Be considerate, so please put yourselves on mute unless you're actually speaking or asking a question. By all means, use the Q&A time for questions. Also turn off your camera. You usually get better reception if you're turning off your camera if you're not speaking. We would ask that we have a collaborative environment, ask questions using the chat, provide comments as well. They don't have to be questions. If you've got some views, please share those with us, and also be open to the views of others as well. We're going to have a panel session at the end, so there will be a process of Q&A. Again, use the chat and refrain from any brand promotion, which I'm sure you will anyway, but we thought we should put that up there. And above all, let's be nice and kind to each other, because this is all about learning and benefiting from the sharing of information. So thank you. We'll go to the next slide. So let me introduce myself again. I'm Maria Palazzolo. I'm the CEO of GS1 Australia, and it is a great pleasure to be hosting today this event. Before I go any further, I need to do an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands of which we meet and work today, and any First Nations people that may be participating in this meeting. For me specifically, I acknowledge the people of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people as the traditional owners of the land and waterways now known as Manningham, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I also recognise and celebrate the diversity of First Nations people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters across Australia. Thank you. As I said, we've got a very interesting panel of speakers today, so I hope that you will enjoy the messages that they will provide. From my perspective, I would like to give you some opening thoughts. There's no denying that we are living in unprecedented times. We've all been impacted quite dramatically, and we've all felt the effects of globalization through this pandemic. One thing that is absolutely for sure, and we all share this view, is the resilience of international and local supply chains. This has been tested in a way that's never really been seen before, certainly not in my lifetime and certainly not in my working career. We've all been witness to the enormous importance that both industry and governments now give to the subject of supply chains. And obviously throughout that supply chain process, what has become really, really important is the ability to demonstrate full traceability of what actually happens in supply chains. And while this is happening around us right now, we acknowledge that we have an enormous amount of work to do. We're all doing a lot, and we're certainly playing in spaces that we've never had to play in before, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And beyond the global pandemic, we're going to find ourselves setting a new course towards a more sustainable and responsible production and consumption system. I think the onus and the importance of sustainability and traceability is something that is going to elevate top of mind in many, many organisations that probably didn't give it a priority in the past. And so the role of GS1 Australia, and in fact all GS1 organisations around the world, is very much supporting not only our members but industry in general to transition to a more circular economy and to play an important part in helping achieve the UN Global Sustainable Development Goals. Each country will, of course, go at their own pace, and each GS1 organisation within those countries will provide the relevant support that's needed. As I said, we're undergoing tremendous change. and where the modernisation of trade is more important than ever before, and where our world is now more digital than ever before. In this new digital world, something has emerged that whilst GS1 has played in this space for many years, it wasn't always recognised, and that's the importance of data. Data is indeed king in the digital world, and the quality of data is also extremely important. And what we want and what we need when you are working in the digital world is speed. Even waiting a couple of seconds for data seems to be too long. So speed and trust is growing exponentially, and so it must be factored in all of the work that we do and all of the support that we provide industry and government. Also, business viability and the competitiveness of industries and economies is increasingly dependent on how well we navigate this shift to a digital world. I firmly believe that GS1 has a critical role to play to help modernise the global trade systems. And of course, how do we do that? We provide support, obviously, and help wherever we can. But the most important asset that we have to give is the fact that we have a set of global data standards which can be used in the simplified trade systems that's going to support the flow of products, but not only products in the supply chain, but also services. And the data that flows through those supply chains, as I've mentioned earlier, is absolutely critical. And this data is obviously always based on global identification standards of GS1. So finally, what I'd like to stress is of great importance is how can we actually build on existing foundations? It doesn't make any sense to ignore what's already been established and what is working very, very well around the world. We can't afford for individual industries and sectors and countries and governments, indeed, to develop their own proprietary way of doing things. All this is going to do is cause duplication. It's going to cause inefficiencies and add additional costs to both industry and governments. And this is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So collaborating to bring key trade facilitation and digital enablers together is a critical part of the success of this journey. And so too is bringing together government and industry engagement, which is really what we're doing today. So I'm especially pleased that we're bringing together the UNECE and the ICC and key agencies of the Australian government. I would especially like to acknowledge Maria Rosario Ceccarelli from the UNECE, who is joining our panel discussions today in the very early hours of Italian time in Europe. So thank you, Maria, for joining us and for sacrificing probably your sleep time. And now that really is enough from me as an introduction and an opening. What I'd like to do now is to hand over to Vanessa Voss. Vanessa is the Director, Market Access and Trade Facilitation Section of Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Prior to this role, Vanessa worked on bilateral trade and economic issues with India as a diplomat at the Australian High Commission in New Delhi. Vanessa is an experienced goods trade negotiator, having worked on WTO negotiations and on Australia's free trade agreement negotiations with China, Japan, Korea, and India, particularly in the areas of market access, customs and trade facilitation, and rules of origin. Before working for the Australian government, Vanessa worked in investment banking in Hong Kong and India, Singapore, and in Sydney. So Vanessa, it is indeed a pleasure to welcome you as our next speaker, and I will now hand over to you. Thank you very much.